Hello everybody, it's vanburman here. Welcome back to another video. You can probably tell by the title that today I'm going to talk to you about the Crusader Kings 3 mod called A Game of Thrones. And basically I've been rewatching the earlier episodes of Game of Thrones, the TV series, and thoroughly been enjoying it again because it is actually rather good. Not so much the last few seasons, but yeah, if you don't know why, then go and read Reddit, basically. And I think Game of Thrones is so intricate with its stories and laws and conjecture and talking points and all the rest of it that the community is actually still pretty good despite its drop off in quality TV show wise. And the House of the Dragon has been better as well, which I think does help rekindle interest in it for sure. And there are two in particular mods that I really like for the Game of Thrones. So we have the one for Mountain Blade Bannerlord. Don't think I've actually played that on the channel. May have not, may not have done. Maybe I have. Really good, thoroughly enjoyed that. Recently played that again for a little bit, and there's been some updates to that, which is great. They've got the full map and all the locations and that kind of thing. Like actually, yeah, the work that has been done on that is quite frankly incredible. And yeah, I wouldn't actually mind doing something on that at some point. And then you also have the mods for Crusader Kings 2 and Crusader Kings 3. The first one I played was the Crusader Kings 2 mod, which was set in the Petty Kings era, so it was quite early. I don't know exactly what the timescales was because I haven't played it in such a long time. But yeah, you had like the whole of Essos as well, and like quite a huge map and loads of different houses you could play as, but it sort of took you away from, I guess, the show politics as well. So it was definitely felt like a proper Crusader Kings like sandbox, but with the Game of Thrones elements mixed in, but not with the same level of, I guess, like wanting to follow the story type of thing. Crusader Kings 3 is seems to be much different. I don't know that they did release other time scales or time periods, I suppose would be the correct way of putting it, back in Crusader Kings 2, but it is definitely in Crusader Kings 3, and they have just released, funnily enough, actually, I started replaying it, or didn't start replaying it, I played it for the first time on Crusader Kings 3 when I started watching the show, and did a playthrough with House Mormont, which is the house I tend to go through all the time. I quite like to start as a small house when I play these things. That's what I did on Crusader Kings 2. I've done two and a half playthroughs on Crusader Kings 3 Game of Thrones mod now as well with the same. I think they're quite in an interesting position in the world, but I'll go through that in a second. I'm going to get the map up and talk through some stuff. But the 0.3 version has not long been released in the last week or so, and that's added dragons now, so that you can now, in theory, have managed to do it, but you can, in theory, hatch the dragon eggs and have dragon riders and bring dragons back into the world. It does depend on which time period you decide to start from. So you can start from the, I guess, like the canonical start of the TV, or actually prior to the TV series, but just during Robert's Rebellion, for example. I think you can start during the Dance of the Dragons, and there's one before that. I think there's 4 altogether. But anyway, like there's lots of customization as well. So maybe I should just get into talking about it. But I don't really want this. In my head, it's sort of kind of a review, but it's more just this is what I've played, this is what I've really enjoyed, and I guess more of a showcase of what it is. And maybe you will also quite like the idea of it as well. I will say that Crusader Kings is generally pretty not difficult to get into, but there's some learning curve, right? Stuff is not, you have to play it in a certain way, and I quite enjoy to play it while listening to music and just relaxing and that kind of stuff. I know I've done Crusader Kings before on the channel, and I actually really enjoyed it when I was doing a live stream because it sort of lends itself to that kind of game stream, I suppose. So I'm just going to make myself a bit small. This can be like an old school video where I'm just there, sat in the corner, and taking up too much space on the screen. But anyway, I'm going to go through some stuff on here, talk about the basics and all that. I think don't want it to be a massively long video, but I do want to talk about the stuff that I'm really interested in with the Game of Thrones mod. So I actually have finished playing it now. I should probably say that. I have had a really good go with a run previous to the dragons coming back, and now a run afterwards. And I think I'll probably wait until the next big update before I jump back in. But yes, it's really worth talking about. So where am I at the minute? I don't know what year I'm in actually. I'm in 403 AC. I'm not really sure what that means in the grand scheme of things, but we're way beyond where the books were, definitely in the future now, which is quite nice. We've got dragons in our realm, two tamed dragons, I should say. Only one rider. We've got another one in the family as well, which is interesting. So obviously, if you're going to start as House Mormont, you're going to be up here on Bear Island, where we have Bearstone and Mormont Keep. And if we can go back through our family history, which is really nice, I maybe should move myself out of the way on this screen. I'll put myself there. But you can go back through your family history, which I love maps and deep like stories, like self-built stories, that kind of thing, which Crusader Kings just lends itself really well to, and the Game of Thrones universe and all-encompassing lends itself to as well, because it's actually less about the battle and more about the politics. Even though there are battles, and there is a Game of Thrones mod for War Tiller, which may well be compatible at some point. I don't know. Maybe they'll add dragons as well. It's an interesting concept, right? And yeah, so if we go back to, so you start off as Jor. Is it Jor? So Jor is in the game, but he is commander of the Night's Watch at the time, and then you start as Jorah, so who eventually becomes captain of the Night's Watch. Is that right? No, it's not, is it? Anyway, that's fine. So you start off as Jorah anyway in it, and you have a wife. I think she's usually very sick, so like there's really good like starting parameters. So I started during Robert's Rebellion, and Robert did win, which I guess you would expect. But certain things didn't happen and certain things didn't trigger in the way, because the game sandbox took over. So you can choose different options as to whether you want it to give weight to the real life, or not real life, I'm going to call it real life stuff that happens in the game. In the Game of Thrones story. But what happened in my one was there were 2 trials by combat that happened in the aftermath of Robert's Rebellion after he won. And both Robert Baratheon and Ned Stark fought and lost their trials by combat. So they both died really early. And Stannis became king very early on. Ned Stark died, and therefore he and Catelyn had only just given birth to Robb. So that means that Jon Snow, Arya, they didn't exist effectively. I'm not sure if that. I guess because Jon Snow was born during Robert's Rebellion, and the rebellion must have took a much shorter time than it took in the lore, I suppose. So therefore, Jon was never born either. And then obviously another was Arya or Sansa or Joffrey or Tommen, any of them. So I got a much different start than I was expecting. I was kind of disappointed about it, but I also quite like that because it just changes the world state. And yeah, that probably hopefully helps set things up a little bit if you're a bit unsure. So the more we zoom in, the more we break down into what the lands look like, who they're owned by, that kind of thing. There we go. That's what I was looking for. So we have the North, which is still owned and ran by the Starks, although if we go back through the family history, we can see that it starts with... Oh, yeah, that's right. Because if we go to Ned Stark, where's Ned? Ned. Have I gone too far past Ned, have I? Oh, gosh, I might have. I don't know. We're several generations back now. I think that's the problem. Lord Rickard, right? Yes, and then Eddard died at 20, and obviously you can see why they died, or not obviously, but you can see why they died. Slain by Oswell Went in a duel, apparently, who is obviously long dead now. And then Robb died at the age of 3 under mysterious circumstances. That would probably mean he was killed. Once again, like, it's just the whole thread and narrative of the story just sort of plays out, and yeah, I don't know. I really enjoyed this kind of thing. So usually my tact is to try and gain land around Bear Island. That's usually pretty decent in order just to increase my influence, increase my levies, give myself a martial advantage, because House Mormont generally have pretty good fighters, so they always end up getting really good prowess. So they generally have a good base score. The males and females, they're all in this House of Warriors, so they all get +2, which is not a small advantage. And then you also have Longclaw as a start, and all the Valyrian steel weapons give you +9 to your prowess. So if you have a house with a Valyrian steel weapon, generally your ruler is going to be like have a decent prowess. Even if it was going to be really small, it would become decent just by having that +9 modifier. And then they all have different things. Like luckily the Longclaw gives us a small health boost. The Mormonts also start with, I don't know if it's hail, it might be robust physical trait that's inheritable. If all this sounds gobbledygook, by the way, that's fine. That's probably how I felt when I first started playing this sort of thing as well, which you can then nurture through ongoing generations. Unfortunately, I did have Amazonian at one point, but lost it, and that's because just didn't get the good RNG when my people got born. But luckily, my oldest son, I mean, he is craven, but he is a genius. So it depends what kind of build you want, what kind of ruler you need, how you want to look after your children. That kind of thing really does determine how it will go. But I took a bit of a different stance this time. So I ended up going after Tyrosh, if that's how you pronounce it. Tyrosh. And taking over this area here. So I ended up basically fighting over the stepstones and all the rest of it, rather than, because I can do that quite freely, whereas trying to fight people in the north, I have to have a hook or it's called a hook, but I'm trying to think what it means in reality. A reason or leverage over your liege lord, which would have been the Starks, which I didn't have. So that really does slow down your progress to being able to expand within your own territory. And then I ended up going to war with, is it Lys? LYS, and I took over Mir as well, and which generates me absolute loads of gold. The problem is, though, because of how the game works in terms of titles and succession not so much of an issue for me. I managed to sort that out, but the titles thing is weird. Like in terms of like being a duchy, a high lordship of a kingdom, that kind of thing. You're limited by basically how much you can expand. So if you look at my monthly income, for example. This is one of the bits I don't really like about the game in general. It's got nothing to do with the Game of Thrones mod. I don't know if there's a way to turn this off, but I would personally turn it off. So the overextension part, and everything is like tool-tipped, so you can see the reason behind things. So because I have more than 30 counties in my realm as a whole, not that I control, so they're vassal controlled, I only have 3 counties altogether, the 2 cities and Mormont Keep, I think it's called, whatever it's called. And that means I start taking a penalty for everything over that. So at one point I was on -60. And so because I took over Lys as a whole, or Lys, sorry, as a whole thing here, I've then actually been trying to lose that land so that it decreases my overextension. But then that reduces the amount of men I can have. It does actually reduce my total income because I will lose land to tax. But it means I will actually get more income. And I was in a really good place. I was getting like 20 odd gold a month at one point, which is, I don't know what the Starks would be getting, for example, in the game, but it's a lot of gold, particularly for what is a relatively small island. But anyway, this tactics allow me to expand into here rather than having to go to war with people on Westeros, basically. So while we're looking at the map, which I think is worth talking about, the the Crusader Kings 2 Game of Thrones mod, obviously a lot more established. Was it obviously a lot more established? I'm telling you, it was more established. There you go. Had all of this filled in, so it had old Valyria, that kind of thing, all the way across, and there was loads of different cultures and well, I'll say races, not races, are they houses, more that were encompassing in this particular area. Whereas for the Crusader Kings 3 one, we only have this side of Essos and not even the full bit, but I think that's fine. Like there's clear room to expand across that they'll be working on. I'm certain we're only on version 0.3, but we've got some of the big players over here, which makes things interesting. And we haven't got Bravos, have we? Bravos isn't in Pentos, is it? I don't know where Bravos is now. I don't know. I haven't seen the map for for this, so or I can't recall it that specifically. But yeah, so you also have all the places you'd expect. There's Castle Rock over here somewhere. Is it up? No, it's in the down. Is this Castle Rock? Yeah, there we go. Linus Keep, Castle Rock's down here. We've obviously got the King's Landing. I should have gone straight to the sigil because that's where it is, because the Baratheons are still in charge of King's Landing. You've got Dragonstone. Is this Dragonstone? Dragonstone, yeah. And like they all have, so you can, as you travel around the world, you can, or as you have to travel to hunts or grand tournaments and that kind of thing, you can stop off at these locations, and sometimes you might get pop-ups that give you chances to interact with that particular area. So for example, I don't really want to go into it too much, but I did hatch the first dragon, so I brought dragons back into the world. Unfortunately, that dragon has now ran off, although she does still stay around Bearstone though, which is quite nice. She's got the Destined perk because of being the first one back into to bring dragons back into the world, and my son of my first ruler, Jaw, was the one to bring the dragon, back into existence. So to do that and to increase the chances of it, we had to go around to various specific sites within Westeros that had connection with dragons that would allow you to have relevant knowledge in order to be able to hatch the dragon egg from nothing. I mean, usually if you've got a dragon riding family, which I don't quite have now, I have the Valyrian blood in my family, I'm married into it, and now I have similar perks, but it's not embedded within my house structure, so to speak. And that then when you have that and you have the dragon eggs, you can give them to your children when they're born. They can cradle with them, and that is the simplest, seemingly, way to get them to hatch. So I do, unfortunately, have a dragon egg that has turned into stone. So I gave it to one of my sons. I think it was one of my sons, and it didn't hatch. And there's a small chance, basically, every year that they'll turn to stone instead, which is a lot more of a convoluted way of hatching them, even though I haven't been given the option to try and hatch it. And I'm not sure if that's because dragons exist in the world, so when there's no dragons you can then hatch a stone dragon egg or something. But I don't understand everything about it, but you can find it out through Reddit, through YouTube videos, which I've done, through the patch notes, that kind of thing. So we do actually have we have a blood red dragon egg, which unfortunately never got hatched, even though we tried to. But it was laid by my dragon that I hatched, which is really nice. And you can see here it says the egg appears to be petrified, and so it shows no sign of ever hatching. Like I say, doesn't mean you can't, but I'm not sure what parameters you can get that will now allow that to hatch. But you can use it in your court and all that sort of thing, so it's not worthless. I imagine I can probably still sell it for a good amount of money. Let's see how much it's worth on the market. So yeah, the team have worked in like loads of stuff. I mean, a lot of it I can recognize from the Crusader Kings 2 mod, but yeah, like because I'm of the old gods, I can visit the werewoods every so often, every few years, and I get a small chance to lose some stress or gain a health boost, that kind of thing, which is really nice. There's stuff that's like from the other mods as well. So train for tournament, I think that's in general as part of the. Actually, no, I think that's part of the tournament's DLC anyway. And then we can choose to ride my dragon. I can choose to not use my dragon in war. I can choose to do this, which sounds incredible, but I'm not really playing that kind of playthrough. But if you were going through enemy land effectively, you can basically have your dragon torch things as you go on your campaign to take over whatever it is that you're trying to take over. Your dragon does have to be really big and strong, though. It has to have at least 100 in combat effectiveness, so you can't just do it with a tiny dragon, which makes sense. And there's lots of interactive pop-ups that happen while you're on campaign with your dragons as well. Like I was attacking an army, for example, and I had the option to swoop down and try and take out the enemy commander, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's really cool. It's very interactive, and you have to make these decisions for good or bad. And my last dragon, actually ended up getting wounded as a part of it, but did survive, luckily. And that's the time where there was only like 2 dragons in the world. So yeah, quite a very useful asset to have at warfare, but also losing it is potentially catastrophic as well. which I'm actually glad that I do have my dragon, because I probably wouldn't have been able to do half the stuff I've been able to do. Actually, I managed to get Tyrosh by basically having some good alliances with different houses and that kind of thing. But in terms of being able to get Myr and take on Lys, I don't know how you pronounce it, I needed the dragon really to be able to do that, because I wasn't able to secure any major alliances. So there you go. But yeah, that's the. Hopefully, I've done a good job of giving you a very brief overview of how things work. Time goes on, events pop up. You can choose to do different things. You can choose to steal artifacts, buy artifacts, sell artifacts, get them commissioned, talk to your vassals, influence people of different parts of the realm, try and make friends with your liege lord, for example, if you want to have dialogue options to give you that hook over them to be able to do what you want to do. So my last leader, for example, was declared the regent of the north. So whenever I can't remember the Starks guy was called, whenever he would go off and leave, my guy would take over and basically run the north in his absence and that kind of thing, because I used my hook that I had on him after a little bit of a small civil war over some crown authority. But yeah, the only thing that I guess is not in this that I would like to see is some eventual timeline of the White Walkers attacking, that kind of thing. That puts me right in the firing line, which I actually don't mind. I think that would be quite interesting. I'm not too keen on the plagues. The plague system seemed to happen too often for me, and these are things you can change in the settings, but then you aren't able to do your get your achievements and that kind of thing. I will say though, one thing that I haven't tried, probably should end on this because this video's gone on for too long, is making your own ruler, and you can set some parameters around what skills they've got, what inheritable traits their house has. So maybe I'll just quickly jump into that. So House Mormont has now 66 living members. I think it's about 10 when you start. So I've done a good job of building that up. But you have all these different sort of, if you think about a roguelite, these are the ones that constantly stay with your leader no matter what, right? And I've gone for heavily warfare path, which suits them once anyway, because they have these first two unlocked. But I'm just aiming towards having house guards as a men at arms, because they seem pretty powerful. And I've already come this far anyway that I may as well do that. But you can have other things like increased inheritable traits, getting more ones, having a guaranteed one, ultimately ending up with an extra life expectancy increase of plus 5 years, that kind of thing. So it's all, it's all very tactical, very political as well, and just like I say, really lends itself to the Game of Thrones model intrigue from the first few seasons and through where the books are currently as well. So, and you can also send people that you don't like to the wall as well. Particularly if you've got prisoners, and there's different traits you can get through the dynasty bit, where you can send members of your family to the wall if you want, if you just don't like them. So yeah, it's all very interesting. It's kind of needs a bit of imagination, I think, to an extent, but it's build your own story, live that playthrough and that kind of thing. So yeah, absolutely, wholeheartedly recommend it. It's really good even in its current state if you're kind of person that doesn't want any issues, because I'm not saying I've not had any issues. I've seen some issues on Reddit and that kind of thing, but dragons riding dragons, for example, which is not in the way you're thinking, or maybe in the way you're thinking, but yeah, having a dragon be a dragon rider. How does that work? How does a human then ride the dragon who's riding the dragon, and then you have two dragons? I mean, that's pretty cool, right? But anyway, I digress. Yeah, let me know what you think. If it's something that you would want to play, if it's something you want to see me play potentially on stream, I would do that. I probably would wait till the next big update though, so I've got stuff to be freshly invigorated to be interested in. And it's really the same sort of thing with the Bannerlord 2 mod as well. I think that's really worth giving it a go. And like I said, I don't know if I've got it on the channel or not, but I probably should do at some point if I don't. So yeah, if you stuck with me this far, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you all in the next one. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.